पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्। So, we welcome you all to one more session with us for the Sadvidya Educator Training Program. I hope till now all the sessions, the information shared were useful, relevant. You were able to connect with it. There was a basic understanding. Today we are going to look at, we are talking about the Panchakoshiya development. Trying to map a child development, especially the early childhood care development, using a Panchakosha model. So today we are going to do the same, but from a core yogic perspective. So we will see what are all the yogic interventions, that can be done across the five frameworks. There are a lot of questions already. Yes, we have recordings. It will be uploaded. We do it on a regular basis. So please keep an eye out. Once it is uploaded, you will anyways get a Google Classroom intervention. Okay, let's start with today's session. I hope there are no more. Are there any questions? I'm going to proceed with today's session. Yeah. Let me know if my screen presentation is visible.
Yes, visible, ma'am.
Okay, good. Now the PPT is visible, right?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, great. So let's start with one more chant. This is very relevant to this session. If you can all mute yourself and repeat after me. This you see is in a sutra format. Sutras are codex, codified wisdom. So this 4 sutras that we will be seeing are from, it's from Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So even before we go to the chant, I would like to, I'd like to keep the floor open for a normal question. What I can take 2 answers for want of time. So what do you understand as yoga? What is yoga? Can somebody from their experience please say? Anybody?
Yoga is union of body and mind.
Okay. Okay. Good. Anyone else? Oh, there's a long silence. Okay, let me just go ahead. That was a very good answer, ma'am. So usually in the current norms, yoga is equated to the physical postures that we usually do. It's not so very limiting. Yoga as a body of knowledge is quite huge. So like G mentioned, yoga is about yuj. Yog is from the root word called yuj. Yuj means to unite. So it is to unite this individual being with a higher order self. So that's the science of yoga. Uh, Going ahead with the chant. These chants, like I mentioned earlier, these are sutras from written by Patanjali Maharishi. Uh, Request all of you to go on mute and repeat after me. Ath yoganushasana. Request everybody to be on mute. Yogachitta vritti nirodha. Tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam.
Tada
Vritti sarupyamitaratra.
vritti sarupya ekara.
Okay. So these are the first four sutras from Samadhi Pada of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Patanjali Yoga Sutra is a codified form of the whole body of knowledge of yoga has been codified into a handful of sutras divided into four main chapters or padas in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra text. So these are from the first chapter, first four shlokas, which defines what is yoga, uh, written by Patanjali Maharshi. The chapter name is Samadhi Pada. So the first sutra says Atha Yoganushasana. So now, having done necessary preparations, having gone through necessary life situations, having gained whatever the prerequisites of experiences, let the teachings, let the learning of yoga begin. That's what is Atha Yoganushasana. So then he goes on to define what is yoga. Yoga, chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta is usually seen as mind field. If I have to translate it into English, it's either you can say roughly as consciousness or mind field. So the request everybody to please be on mute. This is a standard practice. Uh, or yeah, I hope all of you are on mute. Okay. So yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is seen as yoga is the science that regulates or reduces or stills the multiple patterns that arises in our mind field. So how do we understand this? What does this even mean? For example, let's say we want to do, you know, if it is kids or, as parents, we would have so many things to do in between. But then when we were trying to do only, let's say I have to go run an errand, I have to go to the grocery store, do something. But we could see that there are multiple other aspects that come into picture, such as, oh, who would do this, who would do that? Why do I have to keep doing all of this again and again? See, such thought patterns, no, which, if I may roughly call, so which also hinders uh, and forms a gap between the thought and action. That gap, those are can be called as vrittis. At a very subtler stage, even a single thought in itself is called a vritti. So yoga is that process through which these many vrittis, many patterns that arise in the mind field are regulated, are stilled. That so that you know there is a certain equanimity that the uh, person experiences. So what happens? Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So when that happens, so what is the state of the being? The state of the being is that of drashta swarupa. Drashta swarupa means the one who is in constant awareness and who is conscious, who is a constant observer. Drashta is an observer who is in constant awareness and who can see that what is happening. So this is actually our natural state of being. That's what Patanjali Maharishi says. So our identity is that of, that constant observer, and it's not defined by this body. It's not defined by the thoughts or anything. So if this is not the case, if we are not the constant observer, then what happens? So we identify ourselves with all of the vrittis. Vritti sarupyamitaratra. So we would identify ourselves with these vrittis, such as, I'm somebody teaching this. I am a parent of this person, this, that, etc. So why are we talking about all of this is that to understand how important yoga as a body of science is. Because at the end of the day, especially the core Indic thought is that of there is no difference between what happens in the external world and the internal world. Very famously, said or quoted as Yata Pindanda Tata Brahmanda. However, this body, this inner functions work. That's how even the whole of universe gets manifested. Okay, so this said, let's start with the Panchakosha development. We have seen this slide quite a many times, so I hope all of you are comfortable looking at it one more time. So what we are trying to do is There are key domains that were identified in the NCF document for tracking development of the children, especially in the foundational stage. One was that of physical and sensorial development. Another is the social, emotional, and ethical development, aesthetic and cultural development, cognitive decision making, and all that, language literacy, positive learning habits, ethics, values, and dispositions. All of this were the critical domains across which the developmental milestones in the form of curricular goals and later in the form of competencies, learning outcomes, etc., were divided, and we are trying to map things across these. So we are trying to evaluate these domains, map them with the Panchakosha model, and try to develop, or rather develop, an assessment framework which is in line with this. So now we are going to see this from the yogic perspective. It's like, it's like wearing a specific type of glass. We call it as chakshu. It's a certain premise that you said. Last time we saw Annamaya Kosha alone from an Ayurvedic perspective. So today we will be seeing across the koshas from an yogic perspective. Okay. Please let me know if you have any problem following. So with respect to yoga, like as an intervention, as an intervention to early childhood development. So what are all the prerequisites? If you see, it has to be practiced in fresh air. There has to be decent amount of, the atmosphere, the ecosystem should be tranquil. It has to be clean. It is preferred to have an empty stomach and emptied bowel, bladder as well. Loose and comfortable dresses to be practiced on a firm mat, so that the ground isn't slippery. The best time is during sunrise and sunsets. Usually, what we call this as Sandhya Kala. Sandhya Kalas are usually very beneficial for yoga. Yoga here doesn't necessarily mean only the asana practice. It also means dhyana, the meditation, or pranayama, and things like that. Food, with respect to food, the general guideline is at least 2 to 3 hours prior to performing any asana. If you have consumed food, that's better. I request everybody to be please on mute. And very important that the one of the core prerequisite is to be very watchful and aware of the breath. So always the breath has to be normal and it has to be done through nose. One very important thing as teachers, as parents, that we should notice is that, or keep an eye out, especially is in this phase, during especially from 2 to somewhere between 8 years, 10 years, till 10 years almost, the prakriti or the nature of the children body is that of kapha. Last time we saw tridoshas, right? Vata, pitta, kapha. Kapha is the kapha. So that's it's a mixture of prithvi and water tattva, jala tattva. So what happens is children are prone to catch cold. They'll have, because it's important that the prakriti is that way, because they are in a highly growth phase. Their body will develop so fast. They need to build up that structure and all that. So that happens via the kapha prakriti only. So it's important. So what happens every now and then, if children catch cold, sometimes some kids, they forget that they need to breathe via the nose. So they will develop the habit of mouth breathing. So that needs to be parents, caregivers, even teachers, they have to be they have to keep an eye out to make sure that this is basic, that they are breathing through their nose. And especially the best practice is when they're inhaling, the stomach has to come up, and when they're exhaling, the stomach has to go down. This is a normal thing. This is a first core aspect that all of us should be aware of and should keep an eye out. Because what happens at a later stage, so dental problems, dental misalignment, all of that happens because of mouth breathing, for children. So it can be easily thwarted if we just make sure that the breathing patterns are proper. Okay. uh, Next, so Balya yoga is the foundational yoga. General guidelines, what we saw here is a prerequisite. Now the general guidelines is that for children less than 6 years of age, any asana, any posture that we take up, it need not extend more than 10 seconds. 10 seconds itself is a good amount of time, especially for children less than 6 years. So it's okay if they're flimsy, if they keep changing the postures every now and then. That's all right. They will grow into it. But it's important that they are not overstretching, because they get very ambitious. They'll start mirroring other people. If the teacher is able to do for 15 seconds, they would want to do like for 20 seconds, 25 seconds. So that's not required. So 10 seconds is a good amount of time. So then the total time, the Krida yoga session or whatever happens, no, the total time need not be more than 20 minutes. 20 minutes is a good amount of one session, can be 20 minutes. That's enough. Similarly, certain asanas, usually asanas are also coupled with certain breathing practice. For example, in Surya Namaskara, when you stretch, you usually inhale, and when you fold, you usually exhale. That's a normal, natural way of doing things. So, in those cases, let them not be advised to perform for a long duration, because some breathing practices will also request them to hold the breath. They wouldn't know. It would be hard for them to, even if we communicate rightly, it is very hard for them to cognize and understand. So holding on to breathing for long, all this can be avoided. Next, yoga for children usually consists of very gentle, playful movements, gentle stretches, mimicking animals. These are best yoga postures that can be incorporated. It can be gamified as well. And it's very important for the teacher to demonstrate very clearly, patiently, demonstrate to them. They will watch and learn. And the same method can be used for correcting their postures as well, rather than going and saying like do this, do that. If you say, see, if you're standing like this, then it becomes a problem, maybe you'll have to correct it this way. The language also becomes very important. Next, avoid extreme forward and backward asanas. One critical thing is that they will not have that sort of balance. Their lower body balance, they would be starting to gain at the age of 3 to 5. That agility we are building through yoga. So too many forward and bending asanas, it will lead to, they'll destabilize, they'll fall down. They'll become very insecure about their physical body, because it'll feel like they're very clumsy and things like that. Hence, not too many forward and backward asanas. Also, definitely avoid head and handstands. This is not an appropriate age for that. If they do it themselves, like somersault and all, sometimes 3 years, 4 years they do consecutive somersaults, that and all is okay. If they themselves develop a headstand proficiency, that is still okay, but it's better that it's not taught at this age.
Didi, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
In your previous slide, can you go back to previous session? I want to know why the first point, why they should not do the asan more than 10 seconds. What is the science behind it? Can you
So,
explain it?
yeah, it's not a hard and fast rule of 10 seconds, but 10 seconds is a good amount of time for them to hold the asana. What I'm saying here is holding one particular asana. They can keep doing it for 20 minutes, different asanas they can do, but more than 10 seconds, their body gets stretched too much. Attention span wise, all that, it gets stretched too much. It's hard for them. It's very tender, there's a, the body itself is very tender at this age, and they're very fluid beings. So it's better to not overstretch it. That's why it's mentioned as a general practice to not stretch the asana more than 10 seconds. One particular asana, not the whole yoga routine, but just one particular asana. I hope I answer your question.
Yeah, thank you.
So further guidelines are that avoid overstretching. Exactly why we sort of hinted that it's better to keep it as 10 seconds. They cannot be pushed too hard also while practicing. Let them also grow into it. There is no hard and fast rule for them to immediately, uh, master an asana. No, nothing like that. Let them very playfully, joyfully grow into it, because all of their bodies are capable. So they will actually very fast, they'll pick it up very quickly. Just that allow them that breathing space to grow into the asana. For example, if you start with vrikshasana, no, the tree pose, so initially that one leg they might not be placing it appropriately. They might be keeping it in their knee, they might be keeping it in their calf muscles. That is okay. That is still okay. Let them slowly align, and then they will master the asana. If a child complains of any discomfort, it has to be given full attention and appropriate medical help should be given. Sometimes they'll say that they're usually very communicative. They would know. Somebody has to mute themselves. I'm hearing a lot of background noise. Sorry. Never compare children with each other. This is very important. As instructors, as parents, that we don't do it, especially during such physical exercises, because the comparison would be very stark. Don't do it. Each body is very different at this age, and they have their own growth and developmental phase, so it's okay. But encouraging them to sit, in an appropriate way, especially to keeping the back straight and all that, such disciplining is okay. It can be said in a playful way, like, okay, let's start a 10-minute challenge, who can sit straight for longer time and all that. So sometimes what happens, even while sitting straight, they will start straining a lot. So they have to relax and sit straight. So the teacher has to keep an eye out for that. Okay. Then it's very important, like I mentioned earlier, we were defining what is yoga. Yoga is a body of science. We were understanding what it is. So yoga is not merely a set of asanas alone. They are psycho-spiritual, which means that therefore the body itself will grow into it. Therefore the basic principles of yoga, such as yama. Yama means self-regulation. Niyama is self-discipline, shall be emphasized while teaching yoga practices to get better results. What are yamas and niyamas as described by Patanjali Maharishi? We will see now. So these are very important frameworks. Even ethics wise, this will be useful to bring about positive thinking, developing positive habits, understanding social norms. All this can be taught through yama and niyamas. Okay. So Ashtanga Yoga. What are all the 8 limbs of yoga? 8 rungs of yoga. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Please repeat after me. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. So yama means self-regulation. Niyama is self-training. As in, for example, let's say, okay, from today onwards, for the next 10 days, for the next 11 days, I will have only 2 meals a day. This is a niyama. It's a self-imposed discipline. We feel that that would be appropriate for a certain goal, and hence we take. Usually vratas are considered as niyamas. We do upavasa, no? Ekadashi upavasa, this, that. Those are self-taken disciplinary activity, niyamas. So those are niyamas. Asana is, like I mentioned earlier, it's general yoga postures. Pranayama is breath control. Dharana is concentration. Dhyana is sustained concentration or meditation. Samadhi comes at a very later stage. It's not very relevant, especially now to the children, but samadhi is a state of perfected concentration. So
Sorry
what
to
are
interrupt.
yamas?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there were 7 limbs in the previous slide, I think. I think we were
No, 8
missing
limbs.
Pratyahara.
Oh, Pratyahara is not there. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, true. I was also counting.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning. I missed it completely. Yeah. Yes, I missed. It comes after Dharana. Dharana, Dhyana, Pratyahara, Samadhi. I think. Yeah. Thank you. So Pratyahara is single pointed focus wherein the Indriyas, all the outside senses, they would be withdrawn. It's a sense of withdrawal. It will be withdrawn and focused inwards. And that's Pratyahara. Thank you, G, for mentioning.
Yeah.
I'll
No.
correct it. Yeah. So one thing is, I'm happy that all of you are very intently listening. Okay. Yama. Coming back to Yama. These are, we will delve deeper into Yama and Niyama now, because these are the list of Yamas and Niyamas that are cited by Patanjali Maharishi are something that can be instilled as values into children of this foundational stage. One is that of the set of Yamas are Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. Ahimsa is non-violence. Satya is honesty. Asteya is non-stealing, non-hoarding, asteya. Brahmacharya is walking in awareness of the highest reality. Brahmacharya also means walking the path of towards Brahman or towards highest reality, which also means that one can understand Brahmacharya at this age as walking the path of acquiring knowledge. That is also called as Brahmacharya. Aparigraha, non-possessiveness, non-hoarding. That this is mine sort of thing does not exist. So if you see, these are useful qualities that can be ingrained in children. You could see that ahimsa is especially very useful. Honesty, not by preaching but making them very self-aware of their action, they become honest automatically. Asteya, asteya usually happens when there are, that's why it's important to maintain the classroom atmosphere, such as a certain uniformity is maintained, such as wearing uniform, so that nothing ostentatious comes into the you know um, purview of the children, and they would want something that they don't have, sort of things. Yeah. So these are the set of yamas. Niyama. Niyama, if you see, shaucha. Shaucha is purity of body and mind. Cleanliness, general cleanliness is called as shaucha. Santosha. Santosha has a certain contentment. Tripti, what we would call as tapa. Tapa is austerity. Tapa also means that you don't do anything extra. Not a single thought is extra. Not a single word that you do is extra. Not a single action that you do is extra. You do just the right amount of things. Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is self-study. Ishwara pranidhana, devotion towards the Ishwara. These are niyamas. These are general niyamas in the path of yoga. It can be these can be taken as broad guidelines, and appropriate yogic activities such as shramdan. At the end of the class, during one day, you can, like, say 3 to 3:15, children can be uh, put through a routine of shramdan, wherein they clean their learning space, they sort things back into their own, such sort of thing. It gives a sense of ownership of the space. At the same time, they understand that it's their responsibility to keep the cleanliness maintained. So it gets, as a cleanliness as a value, gets integrated in them. Contentment, to bring about the bhava of santosha, one can reiterate, we usually call this activity as count your blessings. So how grateful or how thankful the children are for the day. They would even come and tell something very simple, such as, today my mother made my favorite snack, so I'm thankful for it. It's still okay. Still okay, because the child at that particular age is able to connect with what is his preference and what his mother has made, and how much of work has gone into making it. So such uh, count your blessing sort of activity instills a certain santosha bhava in them, which usually which grows into becoming, at the end of the day, they also start seeing the whole world as in a lot of, what would I say, with a lot of gratefulness. So it's important that way. Swadhyaya, self-study. Self-study at this particular age, especially till the age of 6 years, you can consider it something like, let them be allowed to explore, give them some, me time. So wherein the 15 minutes or 20 minutes, slightly directed, but not too directed, slightly guided, not too guided, a sort of a activity space wherein they will explore things. Usually my kid, what he does is that when we have these charts for, Sanskrit Varnamala or some chart. So sometimes we sit together, we go through it together. Whenever he's comfortable, we go through it together. And then I just allow him to be. We usually call it as autopilot mode at my home, because that's the time when he has had enough physical activity and he would want to sort of sit together. He's put together, he's regrouped within himself, and he would want to do something on his own. So sometimes he would pick up the chart, he would go through it himself. That sort of thing is also allowed. So that's called swadhyaya. So for us, we have seen, especially with our son, that if he has gone through enough amount of physical activity, like a rigorous physical activity, then he would be able to sit composed. So this pattern will vary from child to child. Sometimes they would want to be engaged, like verbally, and after that they would want to be like, they would be all calm and composed and things like that. So it can be figured out in a classroom atmosphere what works for children. Maybe appropriate circles can also be formed according to that. Ishvara Pranidhana is the devotion towards Ishvara, devotion towards a higher being. Okay, that's it. Now we are coming to Annamaya Kosha. We have seen a lot of this already. Annamaya Kosha is this grosser body, the physical development of this body. We have seen the Shadvikaras, that which bothers this development, existence, decay, Vardate, Viparinamate, all of this we have already seen. We also saw, I hope all of you are able to recollect the Ayurveda frameworks that we went through in the last class. We had a lot of feedback saying that it was quite content heavy. Uh, I hope you had enough time. Do let me know if you have doubts from there as well. So these are the major frameworks that we saw. We also saw the Saptadhatu framework last time. So this basically was focused on the Annamaya Kosha. Now the same Annamaya Kosha. So what is Annamaya Kosha? Explained earlier, just a very quick recap. The physical dimensions through the focus of balanced diet, traditional games, involving them in traditional games, adequate exercises, as well as yogasanas. Yogasana doesn't necessarily mean it's an individual activity. There is a set of practices called as Krida Yoga, wherein you bring people together and then they can still do asanas. One group can do one asana, one can help another, and stuff like that. So such yogasanas build both gross and fine motor skills. Age specific, balanced physical development. So the focus will be on physical fitness, flexibility, agility, strength, endurance, resilience, appropriate nutrition. So for nutrition only, last time I specifically mentioned, analyzing nutrition uh, from the model of carbohydrate, vitamins, and fats is one aspect. But analyzing nutrition from the Saptadhatu framework, how nourished is the Meda Dhatu, how nourished is the Asti Dhatu, something like that. How well formed are their structure good enough? Are their legs straight? Do they have problem running? Such critical aspects. Are they jumping enough? Do they have enough lower body strength? Such critical aspects, no, can be easily measured using the Saptadhatu framework. You know, so hygiene, personal health, and all that can be ascribed to the Shaucha quotient. Expansion of physical abilities, building body and habits, keeping in mind 100 years of healthy living in a human being. Okay. Next, what are all the? These are some suggestive yogic activities for the Annamaya Kosha. One is the Pavana Muktasana series. We have given a very detailed list of the Pavana Muktasana series in the training book. You will be getting it soon. Across age 3, 4, 5, we have given it very detailedly. So Pavana Muktasana series are generally loosening, stretching, warming up exercises that one can do. Usually, when one wakes up, I mean, this is the same for even adults. So when one wakes up, usually the body will be a little rigid. It's not flexible enough. The elasticity, you will have cramps and this and that. So Pavana Mukta is nothing but actually it's a free flow of the wind or the vata that gets locked every here and there in the joints. We are trying to release it off. That's why it's called Pavana Mukta Asana series. So it involves loosening the joints, stretching the joints, keeping appropriate breathing pattern, stretching the whole body and all of that. It's a series of exercise. It starts with the periphery and goes till the whole body. Then simplified Surya Namaskar. Simplified Surya Namaskar because it's not rigorous. It's easy for kids to catch up. There is Ashwa Sanchalasana, there is Bhujangasana. Ashtanga Namaskara will do it appropriately during the Surya Namaskar routine. So this is also useful for the Annamaya Kosha. I mean, any form of Surya Namaskar goes beyond the Annamaya Kosha, but at least for now, we are keeping because benefits, if you write, benefits, if you talk about the benefits of Surya Namaskara, that itself will be like one whole book. So currently, we are restraining that Surya Namaskara is very useful activity for Annamaya Kosha. Next is the Krida Yoga series. Flower claps, rain claps. Rain claps is that they tune their action to the instruction. So when the teacher can sort of choreograph it using their hands. So if they have like orchestrated using their hands, so if they sort of raise their hands above, then they'll have to start clapping uh, quickly, and if they raise it down, they'll have to start clapping slowly. All these are fun ways of involving the whole group, because there is a multi-sensorial input, there is motor skills that is getting used, there is a group activity, all of this are combined. So group Paschimottanasana is this picture. The last picture is group Paschimottanasana, wherein you ask the children to sit in a circle and ask them all to try and bend and touch their thumbs or toes while the head touches the knee. This is a useful activity because they'll have fun doing it. They'll help one another and all that. Like I mentioned earlier, Shramdan, evening during when the class gets over, asking, requesting children to clean up, assigning them appropriate tasks so that they can clean it up and things like that also. Pranamaya Kosha. What is Pranamaya Kosha? Can anybody answer? Hello? Hope I'm audible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What is Pranamaya Kosha? Can someone say? Okay. Pranamaya Kosha is generally this grosser body is called as Annamaya Kosha, that which is tangible, that we can touch and see. But we can do this. We can even do this fun activity. Try to imagine that you're having a spear between your
Yes,
hands. You can
Didi,
try doing it now.
I
Yes.
have one doubt that you have told na Shram Dan that
Mm.
children are doing every day. Does it comes under the life skill and habit formation of the children from 3 to 6 years?
It can also come in the habit formation of children, but what I meant is Shamdan is that where they're asked to clean the surface and all that. Even that is yoga. Yoga necessarily doesn't mean that you do strict asanas and only then that becomes yoga. No. Shramdan activity as a yoga from the yogic perspective is seen to help enable physical development. Like I mentioned earlier as well, we are restricting it to one particular question and talking about it. It doesn't mean that it will not it will not lead to developing positive habits. It's not like that. It's not one in contradiction of another. It also leads to developing positive habits, wherein they become self-aware of what they do, because when they start cleaning they will understand that littering is a bad habit, so they will not litter going forward and things like that. It's a byproduct of this action. But from seeing only from the physical perspective, I said that Shramdan can be ascribed to a Annamaya Kosha development. Am I making sense, Ji?
Yes, Didi, I understood.
Okay.
Thank
Okay. Okay. So let's just try to do this fun activity. I request all of you to close your eyes, or wait, look at me, and then maybe later you can close your eyes. Keep your hands like this, and try to imagine that you're having a ball. You're trying to hold a ball, and try to sort of shake your hands this way. Now close your eyes. Keep your focus completely on between your hands, and try to sort of, yeah. Does anybody feel anything?
Yes, we feel heaviness.
It feels like there is a ball, right? It feels like something is there. And when you open your eyes, you just don't see what is there. So that you can call as your pranamaya kosha. That's the energy field, that which flows through this being, which is nourished through breath, especially. All your sensorial perception happens through pranamaya kosha, basically. That I mean, it's not like you don't use your nose, but the 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 it's a combination of your annamaya kosha with the pranamaya kosha helps in sensorial perception. So the energy that moves overall That's the pranamaya kosha. So easiest way to perceive pranamaya kosha is this ball exercise. You can even try doing it with the kids. They will have a lot fun doing it because they're usually so rich in prana. At least for adults, during the end of the day, you'll be like so tired and all that. But kids are always full of energy. So for them, the ball will be so perceivable immediately. Yeah. So that's the pranamaya kosha. If you see at prana, there are pancha pranas, 5 different pranas. One is the normal prana, another is apana, which is the excretory prana. Samana is the one, it's in the stomach area. Udhana is breathing upwards, or your vak is udhana. The fifth one is vyana, the circulatory prana. Uh, uh, so pancha karmendriyas you've already known: vak, pani, pado, payu, upastha. So your hands, legs, tongue, uh, all of this is the karma indriyas, organs of action. So next, coming to the activities. Sorry, this is not Annamaya Kosha. This is Pranamaya Kosha. I'm sorry. Yeah. Uh, give me just a minute. Okay. This is a continuation of Annamaya Kosha only. One moment. Yeah. So Krida activities for Pranamaya Kosha. One is step breathing. Please listen carefully. This is a very, very useful exercise. Uh, I'll have to.
We have done it yesterday, Ji.
Oh, you did it. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Yesterday, what? Yesterday you had Manomaya Kosha. What was there?
All the questions, but Surya Narayan Ji made us practice this step breathing.
Deep breathing. Okay. So step breathing. I think the now was it deep breathing or step breathing? Ji?
Breathing.
Step breathings and snake breathing, both.
Both. Okay. Okay. Great. Okay.
Didi,
Very
I want to know what is the benefit of step breathing, because we have never taught it, and I have never learnt it from our Guruji also in yoga, that you breathe in, hold, breathe in, hold. In one breath, you are having 3 break of breaths. So how does it benefit? I'm hearing it for the first time. Like it's
Yeah.
generally we deeply inhale once and deeply exhale once. But here in one breath, we are breaking thrice. So what is the benefit that it gives?
The direct benefit is that of improving or increasing your length of breath, whether it is inside or outside. You'll be able to, it'll be very palpable that you would have increased the breath length. For example, now you're able to do deep breathing for, let's say, 5 seconds. So if you do it via step breathing, for example, so let me just sort of demonstrate. So what I do is, when I want to inhale deeply, continuously inhale deeply, what I would do is, I'll inhale. While exhaling, I'm exhaling, but I'm holding for a second. Are you able to see? So what I'm actually doing, try to follow my hand. If I do this, the immediate inhale that I do will be a lot more deeper. The same thing goes out for breathing in. So when you breathe in with holds,
I
when
request
you
all of
exhale,
us to mute ourselves because sometimes we're not able to see the master. Thanks.
Yeah. Can I continue?
Yes.
Yeah. So similarly, when you breathe in with steps, what happens is the breathe out will be full length. It'll be lengthy. It'll be a lot more deeper. So why have I mentioned breathe in with steps here is, when such sustained deeper breath outs happen, children usually calm down faster. They settle down very fast. You know, they're, they're in a very high active, high energy mode. When they're able to, they'll settle down faster. Am I making sense? I'm not sure who asked this question, G. Am I making sense?
Yes, yes.
Please try. Please do try. There is no hard and fast rule, but usually we hold it for 1 second. So it's like,
Yeah,
It's like that.
it's better. So adults can also do this thing.
Yes, 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 yes.
That's why in
Usually,
Kapalbhati we are able to exhale for a longer
ah,
time. Now I
yes,
understand. Okay,
exactly, exactly.
thanks.
Kapalabhati, see, one more thing, very important. Kapalabhati is usually followed up with breathing in and breathing out. Immediately there will be a breathe out. Here we are not doing that. Please remember, Ji. Kapalabhati, best way to sort of understand Kapalabhati is that when you one hand you can place on your stomach. So usually the whole in and out will be it will be so deep, like it will the stomach also comes, the abdomen also comes up and down. It's that strong, but this step breathing is not that strong, but it is to actually the step breathing is to elongate or lengthen the whole breathing pattern. Okay, uh, is it do you see the
Yeah,
difference, G?
yeah. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. So the step breathing is not exactly Kapalabhati. Step breathing can be done for both breathe in and breathe out, but ideally it's either for inhale or exhale. You don't do it both times. So it's like, or it's like this, because if you have to breathe and if you have to actually replenish your, if you feel a little tired basically, and usually what happens, no, when you see something and you're afraid, so you have to calm down yourself. So the step breathing, inhaling in steps and exhaling lengthwise calms us down even for adults. That's why step breathing. Snake breathing you have tried yesterday. Simple chants and practice of swara. This is also very,
You said
yeah.
that we are increasing the breath length. So that means we are even increasing the capacity of the lungs.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Actually, it's a direct correlation. Step breathing, Kapalabhati also does that, but Kapalabhati usually is preferred for adults. Kids, what happens? They do it very fast. They become too, sometimes hyperventilation may happen. With kids, it's very hard to regulate it. Hence, instead of Kapalabhati, step breathing is advised. That's all. Yeah, if they get hyperventilated, they'll be like, they'll feel giddy and they won't be even able to communicate it appropriately. Then it becomes a problem. Then they would say, I did yoga and this happened. So, yeah. So coming back to the third point is simple chants and practice of swaras. So swara, introducing them to music uh, also is a good way of enabling their pranamaya kosha. Something simple as sapasa or some simple chants, om, some bija mantras, very simple bija mantras of Ganapati, of Shakti, of Saraswati Devi. All this, sustained, sometimes what happens, I don't know how many of you have heard Sri Rudram. So in Sri Rudram, there is that Mahamrutyunjaya chant, or there is this that one big chant will come, Mahadeva, and it ends like that. So that chant also is a good one. It has so many complex words, but they would be able to grasp it so fast and sustain the breath for so long. So that all can be tried. Maheshwara Sutrani is another one. Ai, Undrul, Ruk. So all this we have in the material. I have not put it up on the slide. So all these can be used for, it's a fun way of engaging their breath. Breath, not just by breathing, but their voice, the tone that they use, all of this will be very well modulated through this. A general deep breathing. For children, deep breathing need not be more than 3 seconds. At max 5 seconds. That itself is a good amount. So keep an eye out. They shouldn't feel dizzy also. So coming back to the third kosha, which is the Manomaya kosha. The Manomaya kosha, all the processing of information happens in the Manomaya kosha. Whatever the senses have gathered, like I said, the Annamaya is one part. All the sensorial perceptions happens in the perception of the senses happens in the Pranamaya. Manomaya, the whole processing happens. So Manomaya can be understood.
Slide change
Sorry. Yeah, hi. Sorry, Ji. Namaste. What were you saying?
No, she has not muted herself. That's why it was coming out.
Okay, good. So Manomaya Kosha. So Annamaya Kosha, everybody understands. Pranamaya, we did the ball thing. How do we understand Manomaya Kosha? You look at a flower, a rose. Wow, so red, so beautiful. That bhava, it comes from Manomaya Kosha. Any emotion, roughly any emotion, any sort of emotion comes from the manas or the Manomaya Kosha. So sankalpa vikalpa. Sankalpa is determination. You have decided that you will do this. That's a sankalpa. Vikalpa is wrong processing of knowledge. Like the looking at a there's this usual example. Looking at a rope and thinking that maybe it is snake. That's vikalpa. You're not seeing the truth for what it is. That also comes from the manomaya kosha only. Raga dvesha, like and dislike. I like this, I don't like this. I like uh, plain milk, I don't like coffee or tea. That's raga dvesha. So raga dvesha is okay, but it has to be directed in an appropriate way. If too many raga dvesha, because especially with children, what happens? We keep asking them, "Do you like this? Do you like this song? Don't you like this?" Actually, at this young age, especially till the 6 years of age, it's better not to form such strong likes and dislikes, because they sort of develop a very hard personality because of that. Otherwise, they're very fluid. They're very flexible, not physically, even the even emotionally processing wise, they're very fluid and flexible. the, the normal things that I've seen happens in Indian households, no, they'll say, are you the mother's child or are you the father's child? These are very regressive way of asking anything to the children, because they don't see such differences only. They don't have a very strong hard and fast gender identification. They don't for them both, they have to look up to the parents. That's the only thing that they have. So it's better to not bring in such strong like and dislike frameworks. Abhinivesha usually is the fear of death, but you can understand it as fear of losing of any identity. It's important to remember this, because at this age they will start, especially after 2 years, they'll start developing their identity of an individual self. It can be communicated in the form of saying yes and no. They'll be like, if you ask them, do you want this, they will strongly say no. Not that they really don't want it, but it's just that they are reinstating their identity, that they are saying no, and hence it is no. Just that. If you agree to it, for example, my kid, he does this, he'll be like, do you want hey, would you like to have some grapes? He'll be like, no. But I would put the grapes, I'd keep it near him, he would still have it. You understand? They don't, it's that's how they sort of form their identity. It's not that they don't understand what they're speaking, but they don't hold on to it for so long. Am I making sense? You have to see that it's not that they don't understand what they're saying. It's not that they don't, they're very clear in their communication. Just that it's not a hard and fast rule that they will hold on to it for long. It's their way of reinstating their identity. Shadripu are,
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it okay to ask now?
Yes.
Okay. What is the role of identity at all? It's a question that I usually get, because if a human being is a spiritual being, and if a child at this age is pure, is considered as equal as God, which is like which is Advaita. They don't have such kind of divisions which we are discussing right now. Why is the identity coming up? What is the role of it?
Yeah.
And why is it there's a path of the human being is like, okay, there is Advaitam that develops, and then the path goes on to actually understanding it as Advaita? I think it's a very broad question, but
yes,
I'm trying to
understand
it so that I am better to facilitate it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a relevant question. So, like you mentioned, Jay, when the baby is born, it doesn't have any identity at all. It doesn't even have an identity of its own body. It doesn't. That's why it takes 3 months for them to focus their eyes onto something, because everything is actually quite unified in the eyes of a child. The being is so tender, it's so complete, if I may call so, that it does not even recognize individual beings. There is no such division at all. There is no such fragmentation. But for somebody to start growing up into a full human being, it requires for them to develop a well-formed identity. An identity, not for identity's sake. It's not a divisive identity. It's not I am this, you are that. It's not. But it's a well-formed one. We would always cite the example of Karna. Karna, the core problem of Karna was that he never had a well-formed identity. But whereas Yudhishthira Maharaja had a well-formed identity. That's the difference. How is it so? Because Karna always had a comparison. He was having a strong inferiority complex. The life situation was also enabling that way, but that's not the reason for somebody to be that way. But the thing is, he never had a well-formed identity. And hence, he was in constant comparison. And hence, although he clearly knew that he should not side with, Duryodhana, he still did it. It was at to some level, it was satiating his ill-formed ego. Ill-formed ego. So that ego has to be, the ego or identity that you say, it has to be well-formed. It has to be nurtured. Okay. The ego or the ahankara principle is a doership principle. Especially identity is required when one has to action it. When one has to take up an action, do it, execute, deliver, you need to have an identity. Otherwise, it becomes a problem. Because anything goes, mein kya hoti hai? What happens is that inaction only happens. There is no action. So, I am a student. I have to be a good student. I will respect my teachers. My teacher has given me this work. I will do it. That's a critical identity. That case, when you say I'm a student, she's a teacher, Advaita doesn't work there. So, in fact, Shriman always cites, Advaitam Guru na saha. You can apply Advaita anywhere, but not with your Guru. It never works. So, yeah.
But whatever you just mentioned, the role of identity, it is, I feel it is so relevant that we're discussing it in this context because culturally, India gives you that rootedness.
Absolutely.
Gives you that strong sense of identity. When I'm actually living in a different culture right now, so I sense the importance of what you just mentioned. I did feel it when I came here. Okay.
Yeah.
And now I really realize it. Why is this important? And what happens when it is not formed, as you were just explaining?
Yeah.
I'm seeing
it's
what is
all
happening.
All-inclusive identity. If you say it is an all-inclusive identity. It's not with respect to this body. It's not. If at all you have to identify yourself, you identify yourself with only the Atman. That's the basic principle that you would like to identify. That's why I said Tada Drashtu Swarupe Avasthana, that you are the all observer. Observer. At the end of the day, that's your identity. And at a certain, samadhi state, that also vanishes. You just become one with everything. But trying to again come back to the topic in hand.
Yes.
So with respect
it was very useful.
Yeah. So with respect to students, it's important that we nurture such positive, well-formed identity. It's important. It is not. It's not antagonizing or alienating anybody else. It's not. Actually, it's not. It's an all-inclusive identity. They would do it for their class. They would do it for their their friends, and then they would do it for the nation. They would do it for Loka Sangraha. That's how the identity gets formed. So identity.
In that case, the marks in the grading works against it, isn't it?
It depends on how the assessment is. That's why we are coming. That takes us to today's assignment. We will come there. So that's one beautiful thing that even in the NCF document, that's why they always mention regular formative assessment. It's not just the it's not a quantification of anything. It's a qualification, qualified assessment. That's why we need to have such frameworks. Otherwise, if you generally do it with English, Tamil, Maths and Science, you can't, there is no navigation at all. There is no space to navigate. How would you do it? But if you take up Is the children, do they jump enough? How would you mark? You cannot mark it. You cannot put it in one number. Out of 10, on a scale of 5, they have done it. No, it doesn't work like that. They have good amount of uh, lower body agility, but they need to gain some balance here as well. It is a little qualified only, and that's okay. Yeah. We would have, I think, one of the projects we have in mind is to actually develop a proper assessment framework using the Panchakosha model. We would do it, I think, over the course. Yeah. So Shadripu are the diseases: the kama, the desire, anger, greed, sense of I, attachment, strong attachment, partiality. All of this 6 diseases are of that of the manas, the manomaya kosha. The pancha jnanendriyas is the sense of hearing, sense of touch. This is not hearing as a process. The sense of hearing, the sense of touch, the sense of vision, all of this are processed in the manas. So emotional and mental development, one of the key aspects, socio-emotional development happens in the manomaya kosha. Not just in the manomaya kosha, but majorly in the manomaya kosha. So how does it happen? So that's why we have activities to keep them focused, express what they feel. It's okay if the kids are angry, if they're throwing tantrums, all that. If you're able to provide that holding space, actually treat them as peer, they will come around very fast. Rather than going on into we usually say, don't get on to Upadesha mode. Nobody wants unsolicited advices. Nobody, including a children. So just allow them to be. But course corrections, they are always open. I've seen that all kids are open for course correction. Even if they're not playing it right, if you do it and then tell them that I was able to do this because I did that, they automatically learn. So you also do that, you do. So gaining concentration, peace, willpower, courage, uh, handling negative emotions. uh, I I wouldn't say so much as a negative emotion per se, but for just to understand things, we are calling it as negative emotions. Developing virtues, the will to attach and detach from work, peoples and situations. These are all very key goals for manomaya kosha, for the manas to become evolved. Because sometimes while playing with one particular toy, they get so attached with it. It's okay. Sometimes try to also, my son, he usually does that. He will have that one thing, he will hold it in this hand, he will do everything with the other hand only. So it's okay, but sometimes you also sort of encourage them to detach from it. Oh, you give it to me, I'll keep it for some time, it looks very nice, let me hold it for some time. That detachment they should learn. Similarly, a lot of kids will be very attached to their mothers. It's not wrong, but they should also become a little self-reliant. Now is the good age to do everything. So uh, yeah, so those things can be practiced. These as simple values can be ingrained if we look at it from the manomaya kosha. Seva, doing anything as a service, is a useful. That bhava invokes the manomaya kosha, and the manas will, full-fledgedly it will participate. At the same time, it will be very free. So seva integrated into everyday life enables the experience of joys of relationships. That sense of gratefulness, no, we were talking earlier, count your blessings activity, that can happen through seva, because they will appreciate their effort. But that effort will not come up as like, I did this. No, it won't be, I did it for that. That sort of attitude will be ingrained. So yogic activities for manomaya kosha, one is yoga nidra. Yoga nidra usually settle down the manas, settle down the annamaya kosha as well. It's also very roughly translated as power nap, but it's not just that. What you do is, during yoga nidra, uh, you try to rotate. There is an audio usually that is played, or the instructor or the teacher can instruct. uh, you ask them to do deep breathings, and you rotate their awareness all through their body, you know and then ask them to gently relax. So consciously, every toe, every ankle, every joint, you ask them to relax. They may not immediately understand. They would be like, "What is relaxing? What do I do?" Just ask them to stretch and relax. So that sort of helps to settle down their manomaya kosha, because things would have got wound up so much. They would have been playing. They would have had group activity. This, that, this, that. So that taking that break, giving yoga nidra will be very nourishing. This way. Simple meditation and silence. Yeah, silence is uh, it's very tricky, especially during the formative ages. But can be like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and it can grow on to 2 minutes of mauna, especially during the end of the activity. Usually after physical activity, silence is easy. When they come, they'll be with a lot of josh. So at that time you ask them to be silent, it's very hard. Too much overhead will be there. But put them through a rigorous physical activity, then they will settle down. And then at that moment, if you ask them to even sit still for a moment, ask them to focus on one simple thing. You can have a picture of, let's say, Bharat Mata or any specific deity, and then ask them to focus on them. That simple meditation, slowly focus on their breath as well. All that can be useful practices for the Manomaya Kosha. The hugging pose. This we would have mentioned in the manual. The hugging pose basically is nothing. It's just a self hug. Usually kids love this. Whenever we teach them, this comes up in the Pavana Muktasana series as well. You hold, you sit straight, ask them to sit straight, sit comfortably, hold both their, they have to hold their palms to the cross. They have to cross their arms and hold the shoulders, and slowly they have to rotate. Breathing can be normal, clockwise, anti-clockwise, change of hands, clockwise, anti-clockwise. This is a very relieving exercise. So sometimes kids might have caught up emotions. That's okay. They may not be able to communicate. They think they are communicating. Especially new caregivers, they may not be able to understand it immediately. So during such situations, this hugging pose usually works, and it's a very playful activity. You don't even have to ask them to do it. You do it once, they'll find it so engrossing, they'll start doing themselves. And child pose is Shashankasana, that you fold your legs and sit, and then just lie down. That sort of relieves them of the caught up emotions. Group havans and Agni Kriya. Uh, of course, all safety precautions needs to be maintained, but usually when done in group, they are usually well behaved. Some simple mantra chanting and havans are very useful for Manomaya Kosha. It develops a very well formed manas, and the emotions also won't be fluttering, especially if they go through. Agni generally has the transformative capacity. So next is Vijnanamaya Kosha. Let me just, okay, we are running out of time. So Vijnanamaya Kosha is the intellectual and the cognitive executive functions. That development is taken care by the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Any sort of decision making, any reasoning happens from the Vijnanamaya Kosha. So how did he identify Manas? What was Manomaya Kosha? Can anybody answer? Anyone?
No.
Yes.
In senses, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha. I think it was through the senses.
No. How do you identify Manomaya Kosha? What is Manomaya Kosha?
Emotional and mental development, ma'am.
Very good. So any like and dislike that comes up, those are usually done by the Manomaya Kosha. Oh, I like this. Oh, I feel good. I feel happy. All that, all the feeling related things are Manomaya Kosha. Sensory perception is Pranamaya Kosha. Sensory perception data processing happens in the Manomaya Kosha. Vijnanamaya Kosha is clearly decision making. Okay, clear decision making. I need this. I will do this. If you actually allow a child to, work along in an activity or something like that, you can clearly see the decision making developing. So we have this activity at home. We'll have multiple letters, alphabets in different colors. So there is this board wherein you can punch those letters. So I'll ask my kid to pick up letter A, which is blue in color. First, he was doing it in a very brute force way. He will search everywhere, then he will figure out. Then 5, 6 times, he started understanding that he needs to identify the color first and then the letter. So first he will very quickly see where the color is, and then he will pick the letter. So that decision making is through the Vijnanamaya kosha. Okay. So buddhi usually is associated with the Vijnanamaya kosha. Nishchyatmaka buddhi, that is a deterministic thinking. Sankalpa, you execute a sankalpa using a Nishchyatmaka buddhi. You decide, you will do this, you take it up, you execute, you deliver. It's important to have, but it's not so solidified as well. You know, when the reasoning framework is enough robust, even decision making becomes a little fluid. So, if they become so decision making and so deterministic oriented, it's a solid thing. It's not like that. That's why we are, also exposing them to Indic frameworks of reasoning and decision making. So then they will start understanding. Oh, I wanted this very clearly. I wanted this, but my mother said, "Okay, we have recently bought couple of toys. Let's do this later." They actually start understanding that. Okay. Pramana, Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda.
But
All these are
largely,
ways.
teacher, largely Vijnanamaya kosha is having the influence of Manonmaya kosha, isn't it? Emotions override decisions, right?
It shouldn't, but it looks
Ideally,
like it does.
yeah.
It looks like it does. There are ways of, okay, let's do this activity. I mean, now I don't know how all of you are, but so what happens is when you clearly know that the emotions are overriding the decision making, all you have to do is 5 seconds. Just pause everything, take few deep breaths, and then you think and execute. It becomes a lot easier. It's about settling that prana level. Because at that moment we are caught up in the emotion because the prana also flutters so much. Okay. When the breath is controlled, everything is controlled. So it's a very, it sounds like magic, but it actually is very straightforward. If you look at your breath, no, whenever the decision making is supposed to happen, when you say that the emotions override the breath won't be stable. Actually. So when you take a few deep breaths, actually a lot of settling down will happen and we'll be able to see with a lot more clarity. We'll see
I
the
think it's
emotions
the same with the
separately.
children example.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the step breathing that you were saying, say for instance, the toy example that you're giving right now. If in that tantrum, in that emotion, even though they know that they have a toy which is very pretty, they're very happy with it, just because their friend has a toy, they want that toy.
Yeah. And that's
so
normal.
when this,
You just
and
need
it's
to talk
normal,
them out
as
of
you
it.
said. Yeah. But sometimes, as you said, as the reasoning develops, they understand it. As the language develops, as the reasoning develops, this understanding also develops. When that doesn't develop, what we can quickly trace, probably step breathing. I'm going to try and see how it happens.
Please do. But like I mentioned, any sort of breathing exercise, this is from my personal experience. I don't know, because few educators, they make magics happen. So as a parent, as a first-time parent of a 2-year-old child, from my personal experience, I feel that any breathing you want to do, you do it after good amount of physical activity. It's a lot easier that way. Because otherwise, to actually put them into one space is like, it's very tough.
I understand.
Yeah. So, what are all the ways of acquiring knowledge or acquiring decision making? Is that of pramana, pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, shabda. So, pramana is when you go back, refer to your body of knowledge, scriptures. Pratyaksha is direct perception, wherein you clearly see, I ran, I fell, so I got this cut. That's a direct perception. And the cut is swollen because because I hit hard, things like that. This is a direct perception. Anumana is inference. Inference, the best example that they usually say is when there is smoke, you can infer that there is fire. So it's like that. I have cold. Why do I have cold? Oh, I ate something sweet. It's an inference. Upamana is comparison and analogy. So Upamana is a useful way of teaching whether to have the toy or not as well. You can tell them, see, Amma wanted to have this sweet, but Amma had cold. So I have deferred having sweet for some time. So I got you a toy now only, no, it's similar only, no. Actually, they will understand. Sit them, sit down with them. Have a very vocal, like, you can just generally talk to them. They're very good at cognizing. we only it's just us parents, we sort of underplay their intelligence. Actually, because they're very vast, identity, etc., nothing is formed, so there is no barrier. They will grasp it like very quickly. Another, yeah. So
I
Shabda is
feel, teacher, the biggest barrier is the increase of thought activity because of applications like WhatsApp. For the adults, for us to, kind
that's
of
why
settle ourselves and
that's
have that
why
leisure conversations.
no, that's true. That's why we have we call it as digital viveka. Okay, consciously putting it down. So we also take up silence retreat. You're welcome to do it. Those are all useful times. Silence, mauna can be, now we have made it into a hybrid model. So 3 hours of mauna for grahasthas, that will be useful. You wake up at 5 o'clock. No matter what, till 8 o'clock, you will just not look at the gadget. That's digital viveka. So we usually have a digital viveka time at our home. Post 11 o'clock, Wi-Fi, phone, everything is off. Phone is completely off the bedroom. So it's just us and the kids. That's a good way of connecting with them. They would love it. They would literally love it. Couple of days you do, a third day you don't have to tell them anything. They will simply follow whatever you're doing because they know that they're going to get that time with you. At the end of the day, it's that yearning for undivided attention, and that's okay. It'll be a lot more rewarding to us as well, as parents, as individuals. It'll be a lot more settling and a humbling experience. Yeah. So the last
Monthly Suresh ma'am has posted questions in the chat. It will be useful for the others also.
Sorry,
some questions are posted in the chat. Can you address
questions have come. Okay. How to handle a toddler handler who doesn't want to correct them? It would be helpful if you as a good Okay, I think there is only one question, right?
Yeah.
Anger management for toddler. Yeah. We'll take it. Okay. Let me just finish off this slide alone, or just this kosha, and then we'll continue with that question. So Shabda is reliable knowledge from seers, experts. Here, Guru. But Shabda, any form of verbal knowledge for now can be taken as Shabda. The executive functions that are being handled by the Vijnanamaya Kosha is attention control, cognitive inhibition, inhibitory control, working memory. There's a flexibility in cognition. Learning difficulties and special needs are also being addressed only at the Vijnanamaya Kosha level. So what all does the Vijnanamaya Kosha do? Observe, experiment, analytical, conceptual understanding, abstract thinking, divergent thinking, all of this, logical reasoning, linguistic skills, creativity and imagination, all of this, power of discrimination, all of this happens in the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Hence, it's important to nurture along these lines as well. And the formative years are the best suited for this. That's why stories, all that should be targeted along these lines. Storytelling can be seen as a fun activity, but taking up stories, appropriate stories. For example, you take up the story of Ekalavya. So if not told appropriately, they would think that Ekalavya has been, a lot of injustice has been done to Ekalavya. But it's not that. There is a lot of background to it. Whatever Ekalavya went through, he went through because of a lot of background. So all that is important. Slowly you build on that. Okay. A wide variety of stories, songs, lullabies, poems, prayers enable children to develop a love for their cultural context, but also provide value-based insights. That's why the framework to which they are exposed to becomes important. Language development, listening, Shravana, they have to do a lot of manan. They have to revise or practice. The senses, indriyas, have to be sharpened to be able to experience the world around them. That's why we were mentioning that patch, that multi-sensorial patch: walk, jump, gravel, grass, water, mud, fine sand, all of this. All the sensory. Now is a time to engage them at a very sensorial level. So all activities, any activity you plan for any kosha, keep it multi-sensorial. They will have fun. So what are the yogic activities for Vijnanamaya Kosha? So simple Trataka practices, especially trying to make them look at one particular. You can start with Jyoti Trataka. What happens? They will go touch it. So keep it in an appropriate place. So you can ask them to focus on uh, to start with, focus on one bindi, or focus on the bindi of the deity, Kali Mata, somebody, and then you can start with Trataka, slowly bringing the focus. Few seconds is also fine. 5 seconds, 6 seconds, it's okay. You don't have to do it for an elongated period of time. This can be done. See here, that's why I've written simple Kapalabhati or step breathing, especially, ma'am, like I answered your question, it settles down the manas and hence the Vijnanamaya Kosha will come up forth. So step
Yeah.
breathing. Mudras. Mudras, Prithvi Mudra, Anjali, all of these mudras, they have their own utility. Especially while starting the class, you can simply ask them to sit straight, relax their body. Sitting straight is a basic quality. A lot of people miss it. If you sit straight, your breathing gets automatically stabilized. Your thought, your emotions, everything, sort of regroups itself automatically. It's such a, it sort of instills a lot of positive attitude as well. So sitting straight, keeping in Jnana Mudra before the start of the class, because a small invocation can be done in this setup. Keep in Jnana Mudra, then chant, then do go on to other activities. So such things are useful for Vijnanamaya Kosha. So Anandamaya Kosha. So this is the last kosha. After this, I'll answer to one of the G's question, and then we will go on to the activity. Anandamaya Kosha is the fifth sheet. This is their general being. Any kid, they usually operate from this kosha only. They're very fluid, they're full of happiness. They're actually, if you see, they're very still inside. All this anger, whatever we say, it's a very fluttery thing. Only when we start identifying them as, oh, it's a very angry kid, this, that, they develop that identity. Otherwise, it's a very passing thing for them. So their fundamental state of rested stillness and happiness is Anandamaya Kosha. And Ahankara, the doership principle, emanates from here. Me, mine, I am the doer. That's why it's important to develop a healthy sense of I am the doer. So Seva Bhava, inculcating Seva Bhava, Kirtans, usually gratitude and gratefulness, it instills a sense of Seva, and also it forms a well-formed ego. Because then it will not be, I did everything, I did it, so many people did it for me, I am also doing it for them, sort of. It's a, what would you call it, it's a corollary. A balanced development of the self identity itself and the sense of belonging, all these are developed through the Anandamaya Kosha. Some few related concepts, especially from the allopathic side or the nervous system model side, is the default mode network. Actually, Anandamaya Kosha is the default mode network. They're very happy, joyous beings. They have a overall organic flow. They're happy. They have a sense of vibrance because they don't have strict structures. It's just us who start putting it on them, and then we say that, oh, my kid is this. Actually, no, none of the kids are. So happiness, love, compassion, spontaneity, freedom, aesthetic sense, the journey of turning the awareness inwards, all of this is done in the Anandamaya Kosha. Exposure to seva, bhajans, music, dance. Dance is a very important aspect. They should just freely, this the body sense should go away. They should dance freely. That will develop. They'll not become too body conscious. It's too much of a burden at this age to become body conscious. So they should just, even if it is a free loopy dance, it's okay. They should just be free, and it will settle them down so much. Puja, devotion will help this dimension in the children. Okay. Few yogic activities, simple Om chanting, Brahmari, no need, Om chanting, simple bhajans, kirtans, bhakti yoga, sense of bhakti has to be, ingrained. Japa, small japas, circle time for sharing experiences, especially when they would have had a lot of fun. Asking them leading questions where they will share their experiences, that itself will be very, oh, you did this and your friend helped you do that. Did you happen to say thanks? All of that, it instills positive habits at the same time. It replenishes that Anandamaya Kosha. So very quickly going through all the 5 koshas fastly. So Annamaya Kosha, we saw a lot of physical activities through yoga. Ayurveda, we saw the Saptadhatu framework for Ayurveda. Yogic understanding and awareness of the Sharira. And Samskara. Samskaras is nothing but roughly called, can be, it's a rites of passage, that's the word. But Samskara can also be understood as what are all their habitual things that they are exposed to. For example, waking up at 5 o'clock, brushing your teeth immediately, drinking water, doing, thanking the god. All of these are done repeatedly, become samskaras. Certain samskaras, usually namakarana, you will, this is very common across the Indian ethos, Indian society. Naming the child, it's called namakarana samskara. Piercing the ears, upanayana, all of these are critical milestones in a child's development, because post which they'll be exposed to certain processes that are that will assist in their respective age oriented development. So keeping focus on the samskaras is important. Pranamaya kosha, like we saw, agni kriya, simple upasanas, simple chanting, knowledge of the swaras, knowledge of the pancha prana, they'll actually start communicating easily, like ma, it's paining here, they'll know that they're going to, if there is a blockage of pran, if the apana vayu is blocked in the stomach, if it has to, release itself, they'll say that it's paining, stuff like that. So that's them gaining a sense of their panchaprana. Manomaya kosha, go seva. I cannot stress this enough. You kids of this age, if you just leave them to young calves, it'll be nurturing to them, to the calf, to people who are seeing it as well. Such a beautiful activity to watch. So go seva, connecting with Prithvi, asking them to pour water to a plant, some small things. Basically, the knowledge of the Manovahana Nadi and Antakara. This is a technical thing, but basically activities that involve them in emotionally, gives a sense of fulfillment and all that. Vijnanamaya kosha, exposure to traditional knowledge systems, invoking rasas in various fields, introduction to Indian knowledge systems. Why Indian knowledge systems? Because the frameworks are robust. Developing an eye for arts and science, critical thinking, balancing multiple things and still doing, not getting caught up, context switches. Context switch is a very software term. So context switch is basically, now my mother is asking me to eat, so I'm eating. Immediately she will ask me to, sleep. I'll sleep. After sleep, you have to get up and just run around and play. So you should not just loiter around in the bed, nothing like that. There's no drag, basically. So application and demonstration as an evaluation, all this, the Vijnanamaya kosha. Anandamaya kosha, Nama Sankirtana, Japa, Seva, silence, Mauna. Frameworks of knowledge from Vedanta as well is very useful for evaluating Anandamaya kosha. Lifestyle where usually sattvic thoughts, sattvic processes dominates. That helps in nurturing Anandamaya kosha. Okay. So coming back to the questions. Give me a minute. How to handle toddler anger he doesn't. Okay. So no, I understand. I completely understand. So I would like to cite from my own personal experience. So there was a couple of nights when my son just did not settle down and he was just crying, vehemently crying. He's not the sort of child who usually does that. So we thought maybe something was wrong with this. This was at 1:30 a.m. Both of us were tired, very tired. You know, we just wanted to sleep, and he was incessantly crying, uncontrollable. At that moment, I sort of, you know, I was like, I thought that okay, if I sort of put the check and balance now, he will he will immediately, fall back in line. That was my thought. So what I did was, I immediately was about to say that, see, you're crying so hard, you're crying so loud. Security is good. We live in a gated community, so I was sort of trying to don't do this, but I was sort of trying to threaten him, saying, security is good. He just went from reasonless crying to anger and cry. He just could not take it. He just wanted to cry. I just should have allowed him to cry at the time. So sometimes it's a very nascent age. So for them to handle their emotions appropriately according to social norms is too much a burden. So allowing them to just be is okay. Even if they cry for 5-10 minutes, they'll come down automatically. If something is physically wrong, then we attend to it. That's a different uh, ball game altogether. But usually, what happens? They'll cry. Sometimes it's okay for them to express their anger, but start directing them. Don't go and say that no, you should not do this. Never use a don't phrase at all to them. Their neural pathways are not meant for that. That forms a huge limitation, and it has a lot of repercussion on forming a good identity as well. So an appropriate would be uh, give them that space, pay full attention, listen to them completely, uh, allow them to settle down, try to distract them a bit. You can sort of train them for a couple of uh, shlokas or a couple of songs that you sing that will calm them down, something like that. you know I'm not saying it's easy, but at that moment we need to maintain our immense patience. That has always helped. So slowly if we redirect them, they'll start understanding. And keep an eye out. Only at that anger moment, they need not need course correction. It can be done at a lighter moment as well. Keep an eye out during uh, during the whole days. Even you can see appropriate ways of ingraining. For example, some kids will be very clingy to their toys. They would not be playing with it. It would just be lying around. But if someone else comes and takes it, they will have a huge problem with it. They just cry and throw tantrums. And if we allow them to be, as parents, they will have a problem with ourselves as well. So, at that time, we don't have to go and tell them that, hey, see, you're not using it. No, no, none of that works. For us only, when emotions bother decision making, they're too tender. So allow them to be somehow handle the situation at that moment. Later, slowly train them. Hey, you're not using this. Can I take this? Hey, you're not using this. Can I give it to him for the time of being? Something like this. They'll be engrossed in playing elsewhere.
Can I just interfere for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Leah, I understood what you were saying. It is perfect. But I would just like to add a few words. First of all, let's not term it as anger. It is actually their sadness. Okay. And personally, like you were saying during Manomaya Kosha, that when a child is born, it has no identity. And there is the Shabda Pramana, right? Where they hear and they grasp it. So whenever we label the kids with something, for example, anger or stubborn or throwing tantrums or lazy, it is better not to do that, because knowingly or unknowingly they are absorbing it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So the best as parents, as teachers, or as caregivers to do is to be with them and understand their emotions.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
They need to have that. They need to gain that confidence that this is my safe space.
Yes,
I can
exactly.
just be. I can just be. That's the freedom that they want.
Exactly.
And,
So something that when we see kids who are going to school, they'll be well behaved at school, and then they come back, then they'll be like throwing tantrums in front of the mother, especially the mother. So it is very difficult for the mother. So we know if we cannot practice emotional regulation, we cannot model them.
Yeah, absolutely. Very rightly said. So it could be something that we picked up from the school as well. It could have been something that they would have picked up from the school. And it's okay.
Exactly.
That's okay. See, at this age, they don't become something very rigid. They don't. It's completely up to us. The more we engage, the more they shape up in an appropriate way. And I was yes, Mohanji. yeah, yeah. It is better to even when we tag such emotions, we don't tag it. It has to be a conscious tagging. As parents, when we say that, oh, he is angry, It's okay. But that's how we can analyze, because we have become rigid enough. So for us to analytically understand, it's okay to tag it that way, but not to utter it so much or not to keep it as a constraining thought. Just need to find
And
a
never
workaround.
to explain these things to others. This is one common mistake that is found in our
Oh,
families, our
never. Oh,
society.
please don't and go and talk about your kid in front of him to others. Don't, never. They completely understand. They
Yes,
lose the
exactly.
trust. That's how. Never do that. Never.
It is just
Yeah.
like how they are complaining about us to
Oh,
others. They will feel
absolutely.
it that way. They also have big feelings, though they are little.
Yes. Yes.
We have to
Absolutely.
acknowledge and validate them.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So that said, that is for today's session. So we have a 1 week assignment for you. So let me just brief that today. I'll be posting the assignment in the classroom. Is my slide visible?
Yes.
Give me a moment. Yeah. So we have done it. We have done a miniature of this already. So what I expected, what is expected of the class is that, number one, please go through the NCF document, not the whole of it, at least the second chapter. The second chapter is very useful. The first chapter can be given a quick skim through. You'll broadly start understanding. If you go through the table of contents, you'll start understanding, because you've also gone through the class. So you'll start understanding the larger perspective, and you can read content based on your need. But for this particular assignment, it's useful that you go through chapter 1 and chapter 2, chapter 2 quite thoroughly. So what you have to do is that you identify one curricular goal from any of the 5 domains. It can be physical development, it can be socio-emotional well-being, it can be language literacy, it can be positive thinking. Any one of the domains, you identify one curricular goal, you identify competencies that will be done by the goal, you identify learning outcomes. This you will replicate for age 3, 4, and 5. You will develop a teaching plan and list of activities to achieve those learning outcomes. So what you would do, for example, take up a physical development. Okay, now I will focus on physical development as a domain. So in physical development, you will take up the curricular goal of, they would have already listed 3 curricular goals for physical development. You can take up any one. Full structured, well-developed body. You have taken that curricular goal. Then what are all the competencies that is expected for age 3, 4, and 5? That also they have listed in chapter 2. You can go through that. So you pick up that. Then learning outcomes. That is again listed. So that also you can see, you can map it, and then list down set of activities that will enable to develop the learning outcome and competency. Okay. How will your teaching plan be for that? For example, if I say, first, let's say today, since we are talking about yoga across the koshas, so I am taking physical development as my domain. The learning, the curricular goal that I'm focusing on, a well-rounded body, healthy, clean body. So the third one is the competency will be good strength, able to handle their own body, good body awareness, what others, um, agility, robust structure, all of this. These are competencies. What are the learning outcomes? Kid should be able to run and jump on their own. They should be able to do this set of specific physical activities. So now for this learning outcome, how will I list down the set of activities from the yoga framework? I would say, okay, let me teach them Surya Namaskara, simplified Surya Namaskara. Let me teach them what is it called, Trikonasana or Vajrasana or Vrikshasana, the tree pose. So this tree pose will help them focus, uh, help them increase the attention span, which directly affects the Vijnanamaya kosha. It will also mimic the tree. They will be able to connect with nature. They will see that the tree stands like this. I'm also trying to do the same thing. It's that. Number 3, they will also develop that strength and balance. So these are all the 3 learning outcomes that can be expected. So how will you teach it? For example, this particular activity of for the teaching plan, we had exposed you to that Panchadi framework. No, one is introduction, abhyasa, explanation, all of that. That 5 things. So you can use that basis to develop a teaching plan. For example, the teaching plan, the plan can be, oh, have you looked at the trees? How are they standing? Do they have 1 leg or 2 legs? So how, if we have to stand like tree, how will we stand? That sort of thing, wherein they understand it conceptually, wherein they are able to replicate it as well. Okay, this first part, is it clear? Are there doubts? First question. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
I hope since the long silence, I understand that it was clear. So the second question, we would like you to get hands on. We would like for you to try. Uh, let's just keep it a little fluid for now. You have to bring about an assessment model which will evaluate this learning outcome. The above mentioned learning outcomes, you will have to evaluate it. How will you evaluate it? Across the Panchakosha framework. Am I making sense? So how will you know whether for example, now we are teaching Vrikshasana. Vrikshasana, because focusing on physical development as the curricular goal, domain, focusing on the curricular goal of robust body, focusing on the learning outcome of agility, well-balanced, strength, etc. So how will you evaluate it across the Panchakosha framework? Number 1. So I taught them Vrikshasana in this particular way. That will be your teaching plan. So now to assess it, kids are able to understand what is, conceptually they understand what is Vrikshasana. They're able to stand. They're able to correct the posture of others also. They're able to sustain a corrective posture. They're able to sustain the posture for so long. All these can be taken as assessment parameters. So how will you develop this assessment across the Panchakosha? So for Annamaya Kosha, you would be saying that good body balance. Yes, they are able to maintain the posture correctly. So that's for Annamaya Kosha. They're able to focus. The attention span has increased. That's for Vijnanamaya Kosha. Thirdly, they have a good sense. Their feeling is that of very settled, and they don't have any strong drag while executing the asana. That's for the Manomaya Kosha. They're very participative group. They're encouraging of other kids and all that. That's Manomaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha. And overall, when they are doing it, they are fully energized. They're very enthusiastic. They're doing it properly. That's Pranamaya Kosha. So like this, how will you form an assessment? It can be questions, set of questions. You will have to also say that it's a regular formative assessment. So you will have to time it appropriately. I have introduced this. 1 week's time, I will check them. After 3 weeks, I'll check this. Follow. Okay. Second one is a little open-ended, but I would like for you to try your hands on. First one is fairly straightforward. I think everybody can do that. So pick up one domain, and from there you pick up any one curricular goal. Go to the bottom of all the competencies, all the learning outcomes, and devise set of activities and teaching plan. This has to be across the koshas. So yeah. Are there any more questions?
Yeah. So this is not exactly related to the course, but is there any at Anadi, is there any thing for preschoolers or?
Okay, somebody had sent me a mail regarding the same. I'm not sure if it is UG. I will address that. I will come to that. But before that, let me just close this assignment question. Is it clear? Is the question clear to everybody?
Yes.
Are there any more doubts in the question?
Can you, what you explained, can you give this as a sample and post in classroom so that it will be easy for us to do from our side?
So I will just run it quickly for you. Give me a moment. So what I meant as, picking up a domain is this one. So if you see 2.3, you can maybe quickly make a note of the chapter numbers. Chapter 2, section 2.3, they would have mentioned the curricular goals for the domains. Domains are these: physical development, socio-emotional, ethical, cognitive development, language and literacy, aesthetic and cultural development, etc. Okay. So in physical development, you can pick any one of these 5-6 domains, any one domain, pick up one curricular goal. Say children develop habits that keep them healthy and safe. So this is curricular goal 1. So for that curricular goal, what are all the competencies that are expected? You will take up all these competencies. Showing a liking for and understanding nutritious food, does not waste, practices basic self-care, keep school and classroom hygienic and organized, practices safe use of material, show awareness of safety in movements and acts appropriately, understands unsafe situations and asks for it. All of these curricular goals, all of these competencies. For these competencies, you will be developing learning outcomes. See, differentiation between shapes and colors. This is 2.1. For that curricular goal, they have developed from 3 to 8. This is the learning competency. So you can see this and develop your own learning outcome for that particular curricular goal. Okay? Am I making sense?
Yes, Ji.
For competencies also, you can take maybe 1 or 2 competencies. Let's not take it too much. So decide one domain, decide one curricular goal from that domain, pick up any one competency, and for that particular competency, you take up all the learning outcome and decide activities for that. Okay? Is it clear?
Sorry, ma'am. Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Yes, I'm reiterating again. Pick up one domain. So which domain you will decide based on the table in section 2.1. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So do you see? These are the set of domains. You can pick any one domain. Say cognitive development is the domain you're picking. See, even for cognitive development, if you develop activities, it can be assessed across the Panchakosha framework. Okay. It's not very strictly that it has to be relevant only to this one. What is it? Vijnanamaya Kosha alone. But broadly, we map cognitive development to Vijnanamaya Kosha. You understand, right? Because see, if you do Vrikshasana, it also develops a certain body agility. But at the same time, your focus is also getting increased. So it's quite overlapping. So what you would do from section 2.3, you will pick up one domain. From that one domain, you will pick up one curricular goal. For that one particular curricular goal, from there you will pick up, these are the list of competencies. You will pick up one competency. I hope you can do 2 competencies, but at least one, please try to do. So one competency you will pick up, and for each of the competencies, you will develop learning outcomes. Learning outcomes, how to develop, you can refer to table 2.5.8. Okay. So these learning outcomes you will develop. After you develop your learning outcome, you will decide upon the set of activities that you would do to achieve these learning outcomes. And what would be the teaching plan for it? How will you teach these activities using the Panchadi framework? Okay, that's question mark. Am I making sense? Is it clear?
Yes, yes, Ji.
Yes.
Good. So that's the assignment. Then we have assessment framework. Try to bring about an assessment model which would evaluate these learning outcomes across the Panchakosha. Okay. Try doing that. It's a doable thing. Please try doing. Sorry, there is a power cut here. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Can you please post this recording as well so that you can refer to if you need it? Okay, we will do it. Yeah. So coming back to the question, we had just give me a second. I'll take the questions. There are a couple of questions that has come via over mail. Uh, just trying to find the questions.
You don't need come.
Somebody has to mute. Okay, with respect to Anadi, currently we have developed the curriculum thoroughly. The Sadvidya curriculum specifically is for foundational stage preschoolers as well. We are running one Parampara preschool with in collaboration with Parampara Educational Society at Hyderabad. So that's basically based on this curriculum only, the Sadvidya curriculum. That's one. At the foundation here at the ashram, we don't have one yet. But that's why we are also working on the educator training program. So this can be decentralized and the model can be replicated everywhere. That's the answer, Ji. Would you have any more questions, Ji? So there was one about.
Sorry. Can I talk to you later?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
Okay.
No problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So there was one question regarding that the parent is an aspiring homeschool parent, and they feel that they're not very sure how they would be able to participate in the project work. We have modeled the project work taking into consideration of all of that. So it shouldn't be an issue. But please reach out to us anytime you have any doubts. If you find it too technical, if you find it very non-relevant to you, if you're not able to make the connect, please let us know. We're all ears. Yeah, that is about it. Are there any more questions? Okay, great. I think we are done with the questions. So request all of you to sit straight, relax. We'll end it with a small chant. लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति 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 ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः Thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you in the next session. I hope this session was useful.
Namaste.